I am Tony O'Neill, and welcome to the Outdoor Industry Executive Voices podcast. Today, I have a really special guest that I'm super excited about, Mr. Brian Lockard. Brian has carved an impressive niche in the business world, transitioning from working at a global powerhouse, Nike, to forging his own path and developing a shoe brand from the ground up as co-founder and CEO of BALA Footwear. His startup developed high-performance footwear for our healthcare heroes. Under Brian's leadership at BALA Footwear, not only did they flourish, they achieved significant milestones, including being acquired by one of the largest medical apparel distributors in the USA. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Tony. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Brian, tell us this. What was your entry point into the outdoor and sporting goods industry?
Yeah, so almost exactly 10 years ago, I was living on the East Coast and working in consumer and community banking at JPMorgan Chase. And I think like a lot of people at the end of my 20s, I was kind of doing a lot of thinking about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I was really happy about the things I was doing. I enjoyed my work, the people I was around. But I've always been an outdoors athlete and loved the having mountains nearby and being able to do things I like to do. And so I started looking at being in the Pacific Northwest and making a career change into the sport and outdoor industry. And it was hard because I didn't really have any connections. Portland is a bit of an epicenter. The Northwest is a bit of an epicenter for this industry. And so I started working on finding connections out here, learning what it would be like, trying to find companies that would be interesting. And it's really interesting. It's cool when sometimes there's an alignment between something that you are doing, a personal passion of yours, and something interesting happening at a company that's a major player. So one of the things I've always been really passionate about is increasing opportunities for sport for young people. And at the time, Nike had this really cool team called Access to Sport, where the mission was to create more early positive experiences around sport and activity for kids, focused on increasing access around the world to sport. And that's something I had always been passionate about. And they were hiring for a strategic planner, which is basically an internal consultant who works with the VP to drive the long-term strategy. And it really aligned so well. And so I felt lucky to be able to get that position. And so I moved out to Portland, Oregon, and began my journey in this industry. And it was a really nice landing because, like I said previously, I didn't have experience in product development or any of the things that would be natural to a consumer goods company. But being able to work in strategy where I had experience and on a personal passion where I had a lifetime of experience was a nice entry point. I was able to move from there.
That's so interesting because so many people try to get into this industry, whether it's the outdoor industry side of it or the sporting goods side, and you were able to do so. I'm super curious, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening, how did you land this first opportunity with Nike?
Oh, I had really good people around me. If I could go back in time and give myself some experience, I think a lot of us when we're younger, we think about specific skills that we're looking to acquire, how they match with jobs. And I was only able to get that job because of some really good people around me. So a good longtime friend of mine named Barry Glock, who was an executive in the off-price business, had done a lot of work with Nike over the years. So he made some introductions to people he had done business with. And I made a trip out here to see if I actually liked Portland, and two, to meet some people. And so I spent the week having a lot of coffees and a lot of beers with new people. And I was able to connect with some people who I really hit it off with, one of whom, my friend Keith, worked with this team called Access to Sport. And so he was able to get my resume in the mix, and I started the interview process from there. But it was really just about telling people who I had a good relationship what I wanted to do, and then following up on the connections they were able to make for me.
I feel like this is the conversation I've been having for 12 years now. It's your network, right? And that's what you did. You leveraged your network. You met people. You had people that could help champion you. That is the story that I try to share with so many people. What was your first role with Nike?
I was a strategic planner with that team, Access to Sport. The role of the job is to work very closely with the VP who runs the group to define what the long-term strategy is and really package that up in a way that's simple to articulate. And then really as a right-hand person, work with the leadership on the team to help with execution. So in that role, I did everything from creating presentations that went to the executive leadership team at Nike and corporate secret reviews, to organizing the team's quarterly business reviews, to scheduling global teams to make sure we could all get together seamlessly. So it was a role where you had the opportunity to do some work that got in front of people at the upper ends of the company, and also had to be able to roll up your sleeves and do things as simple as scheduling, showing up at meeting rooms early to make sure your VP looked good. But yeah, honestly, it was a really good learning experience, because previous to that, I had a lot of experience in executing things on a day-to-day basis in my previous work, but I hadn't had to actually bring together people around the globe and make sure things are getting done, organized, and so on and so forth.
At what point did you come to the realization that you may want to build your own footwear business?
That actually didn't happen until after I was out at Nike. I had left there in 2017. There had been a riff around then that my role was impacted by. So I moved on after that, and it led to a period of exploration where I started doing some consulting with a few different companies in the outdoors business. And I really took it on as an exploration of what I wanted to do. And the approach I ended up landing on was I actually didn't know what I wanted to do, but I'm going to spend time with the best people that I know, and I'm going to say yes to every project that comes through there. And it doesn't matter if it's a free project for somebody trying to get something off the ground, or if it's a long-term consulting project. I'm going to learn what I want to do by spending a lot of time with really good people. And from that came the idea for healthcare, for shoes for healthcare professionals. That was 2 years after I was at Nike. So it was a long period of exploration, but ultimately led to something that I was passionate about. And I realized that what was really missing for me personally in working at large companies was that feeling of having an impact on a day-to-day basis and seeing what I am doing matter. So the reason that I was able to have a lot of advantages growing up is my dad ran a small business for 40 years, a physical therapy practice outside of Philadelphia, that was able to make money so that he could put food on the table. They could put me, my brother, and my sister through school, created jobs in the community. It was a place that helped people who were injured go about their daily lives and have new things. And what I realized I love about business is the impact that it can have on a lot of people. It kind of breaks my heart that business has, it's not something that necessarily people aspire to unless they're trying to make a lot of money, or at least that's the way it tends to be perceived. I see a lot of younger people who actually don't seem to feel inspired by what business can do. And so I found a startup idea that aligned with something I was passionate about. But what I really learned was how much I love the outputs of what new business can create. And that's what motivated me.
Now, your father owning a business, and then you working for some very large, iconic organizations, did you always feel like you had an entrepreneurial spirit? Or is this something that developed after you parted ways with Nike?
I think I did, though I didn't realize it. I mean, as an entrepreneur, what do you think? If you look at the things that you need to have as an entrepreneur, you need to not be afraid of failure, because you're going to fail a lot. You need to be able to work really hard. You need to be able to see opportunities where other people see problems, and you need to be able to inspire and motivate people towards a shared vision. And those were things that I think came to me a little bit naturally as I was growing up, and I enjoyed. But like I said, in my 20s and even early 30s, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, because I had always been thinking tactically about these are the fundamental things I want to do on a day-to-day basis, not what actually brings me joy and where might I be able to find that. And so, like I said, I didn't really realize that I was drawn to entrepreneurship until I was put into this place of having to really do the exploration around what I want to do with my career. So in hindsight, I'm really grateful for that riff, because without it, I might still be doing a job that I kind of sort of like, but not having found what I really am passionate about.
What was the first feeling that you felt once your job was eliminated?
Losing a job sucks. I mean, but pardon the language, but it's, I think that when you go about your life really establishing your identity around, like, I always prided myself on work ethic, on achievement. And growing up, we tend to connect achievement with identity. And it's a blow to your ego. I mean, a lot of people, especially younger people like I was at the time, you don't realize how much is out of your control over the course of a career. Like, I had nothing to do with what was going on at Nike at the time. And ultimately, sometimes companies have to reduce force. And it was really tough at first because it's tough to separate something that happened to you from your identity. But I went back to something that I learned when I was young. It's like, you're not defined by the things that happen to you. You're defined by how you respond to them. And so I gave myself a day or two to be frustrated. And I said, I got to figure this out. I'm not defined by the things that happen to me. Everything is about how you respond. And another thing I found to be really important is when something adverse happens, it's very easy to narrow your focus on the thing that happened and how you wish it was different. In reality, careers are long. We're not just working professionals. We are humans with a lot of things in our lives. So I'm not just a professional, but I'm a wife. I'm not a wife. I'm a husband to my wife. I am a friend to a lot of people. And I had to remind myself that my life is a lot more broad than this career. And this is just a thing that has happened. And I get to decide how I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to make something good out of this.
Yeah. Brian, we're not really born with that, right? You said something in there that strikes a nerve with me too, right? As my search business does well and is growing, I feel like that's my identity. And then when my search business is not growing at the rate or the pace that I want it to, it affects me sort of in that same way. You feel like my identity is tied to this. At what point were you able to really understand that it isn't about, kind of to summarize what you said, it's about how to respond, not how to react, right? We react when bad things happen. If a driver cuts us off and we yell or hit the horn, that's a reaction, right? But then there's another way that we can actually respond. We can slow down, we can let them go. You obviously went through this as the riff happened. You're now trying to figure out what you want to do next. At what point did you learn that this response is going to be critical to your success?
That's always been part of me. It's just always been, life isn't just a series of successes. So, honestly, it just took me a day or two. So actually it reminded me of, honestly, I thought of something my dad said when I was younger. So when I was growing up, my dad coached my soccer teams until I think 8th grade or something like that. And I remember one game when I was in middle school, we played one of our big rivals and we got a real ass kicking that day. It was bad. I think we lost 6 or 7-0. And at the time I identified, a ton of my identity was wrapped up in being a good soccer player and winning games. And I was so mad. I was throwing a temper tantrum like little kids do. And after the game, my dad pulls me aside and he says, my dad has a very direct way of speaking, especially then. And he said, son, in life, there's big stuff and there's little stuff. And I hate to break it to you, but this is little stuff. So you have 10 minutes to be upset and then we're going to go home and we're going to go about our lives. And so I threw a temper tantrum for 10 minutes and then I knew better than not doing anything else and we went our lives. But really, it's about reframing. And so people sometimes get ripped from jobs. Other bad things can happen to you. But if you can reframe it in a broader context, most things we can overcome. And so for myself, I was I've overcome a lot of things in my life. I've had things go different ways that I want them to, but it's just become kind of core to acknowledge things didn't go the way I wanted to go. And then remind myself that the way I respond is what really matters. And so I think your question was, how long did it take you to realize this? I took a day to be upset, just like my dad said I could have 10 minutes to be upset. And then I went about doing the work of finding something new. And again, that's something that I know about myself is that I'm a lot happier. The worst place I can be is not being able to do anything. And so if I can give myself something to do and refocus my energy, it's fine. So I said, you know what? I am going to do the work I have to do to find something new, to find something that I find passion and a next career, because that's what I can do. And if we focus on things that we can't do, we tend to be upset. For myself, I can always reposition and say, what can I do now? And I think that was really key to being an entrepreneur. Because as an entrepreneur, you're always faced with challenges. You have to focus on what can I do today to make things better.
That is an incredible lesson that your dad taught you at a very early age. I feel like I didn't learn this till I was older. I was actually having a physical therapist, a very close friend of mine, was doing body work on me, and he had shared something similar about the difference between reaction and response. And so mine came later in my life, but you had yours earlier in life, and that's goes back into what you were saying about being an entrepreneur, right? Resilience is really the core tenet of being an entrepreneur. At what point did you realize that you were sitting on top of an opportunity or an underserved community, right? The medical establishment who's on their feet all the time, in very unique, different work conditions than the average office worker or whatever type of worker for that matter. What was that inflection point for you that you realized there's something special here that can really help these people?
It was all about the response. So we first started exploring the opportunity for healthcare footwear in, I believe it was April of 2019. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs jump into a business idea when they see it, but they don't validate it. And me and my business partner, we came from Nike, where the mantra is always listen to the voice of the athlete. And for us, it was we had to go to the consumer first and understand that, because I'm not a healthcare professional. My business partner wasn't a healthcare professional. How could we possibly know, what it is like to see the world through the eyes of a healthcare professional? So instead of getting the business going, designing a product and going to market, we set a goal of talking to as many nurses and healthcare professionals as we could by the end of the year. And at some point in the fall of 19, we would decide if we thought there was an opportunity that we could go after. And it's really interesting that I think in an entrepreneurial journey, there's a moment when you see the opportunity. There's a moment when you know that if there's a business to be had there, and then there's the moment when you know that you can do it. And so the first person I called was a good friend of me and my wife's name, Amy Paul. And she's a nurse at OHSU here in Portland. And I called her up and I said, hey, me and my friend are thinking about making shoes for healthcare professionals. If you're open to it, I'd love to maybe get together and ask you about shoes, what you wear, what you like them. And her response was, hey, Brian, I've been working for 10 years. My feet hurt every day. I try 2 or 3 new brands every single year. If you're telling me that you're going to make shoes designed for nurses, I'm in. Let me know. And then she actually came over, and her and my wife split a bottle of wine for 90 minutes. And we talked about shoes and her whole history of shoes. And then we set out talking to people. And, when I was in Philly for my brother's wedding, I had 10 nurses from UPenn over. I got similar stories. My business partner, his mom lives in Denver, and she was having some health issues that summer. So every time we flew to Denver, took her to the hospital, focus group with the nurses at the hospital there. And we kept hearing this passionate response. And this is the second interview where I knew this is the second insight when I knew there was a business to be had, is that we started learning that there was this emotional desire to be heard. A lot of nurses really felt not just underserved in shoes, but not heard by companies that were serving them. And so we realized that the value proposition in our company, the thing we build it around, is we're not just going to have the best shoes in healthcare, but we are going to be the company that knows the nursing community and serves them best by involving them in every element of the company. And so building a community with nurses and involving them in our product creation, in the creation of our brand, and how we would go to market became really key. And then I knew that we were the team that could do it when we were able to onboard some key folks in design and development that could actually make this a reality. And so by January of 20, we had all the insights we needed. We had started developing the product, and we had a team that I thought was incredibly well positioned to take advantage of this opportunity.
Okay. So did you or your business partner have a background in consumer insights?
No, well, so it's kind of funny where your backgrounds come from. And so, John's been in product forever. So he's got a ton of experience in talking about product. And for myself, I actually did my undergrad degree in journalism, which is honestly pretty similar to business. If you're a journalist, you're going out every day, talking to people to try to learn something. And then you're synthesizing it into a story that helps your audience learn something. And so what I learned as an undergraduate was that core skill of asking really good questions, listening intently to people, and then synthesizing it. And what I learned in that whole process, same thing as consumer insights, except you're just asking questions of people to try to learn about what they want. You make a product for them instead of synthesizing it into a story for an audience. But it was kind of cool because I did that degree in journalism and then never actually ended up working in the field. So that was the first time where I really, really felt that something from that degree was playing into my career, which is really fun.
Yeah. This is unique because I have found specifically in the outdoor industry that most companies and products are started by really a brilliant mind that sees that wants to create something for themselves, right? Whether they're trying to create a stove that can boil water in 60 seconds, right? They're thinking about a product that actually serves a problem that they have or something that they want to solve. But you did it differently, actually, the way that large CPG companies will use their innovation pipeline. And that is, you went out and talked to people and figured out, all right, do we actually have a problem? And if we've got the problem, is there a way to solve it? And I think that's just pretty unique because there's so many products that have been developed by someone, who's an engineer or has this design mind, but not necessarily looking directly at and talking and speaking with the consumer to get the insights to then create the product, and then using your background at Nike and your business partner's background in product, and then being able to develop something that truly serves and fits a need that exists.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's way more fun when you get to listen to people and create something new and unique for them.
Yeah. So tell me this, once you had this idea, you had what you believe was validated by the insights that you were out gathering. What was it like? What was the first step in actually making it come to reality? What was the first thing once you had that information, you and your business partner were like, all right, it's time to go. What was that point?
Well, we had to have the right team in place. And so we had on board a third co-founder who was a world-class footwear designer from Nike. We set up our supply chain so that we knew we'd be able to make the product. We had factory in Asia, we had shipping, everything, all the fundamentals, getting the business in place. That was key. But I think the real turning point was actually in late January of 20, we onboarded a guy who would become our first employee, a guy named Chris Satawa, who ended up starting as a contractor and became our VP of product eventually. But he was that key team member who was able to bring it all together, and no matter what happened, that product calendar was going to stay on schedule. So I always remember one of my favorite stories about this company. So it was February of 20. And we've got our first samples on order. And Chris gets word from the factory that, hey, this coronavirus thing is only going to set us back a couple of weeks. We don't anticipate a lot of inconvenience. Like right at the top of statements that have not aged well. That didn't work out. But anyway, so what happens is, March of 20 happens. We get lockdowns. Our samples show up, and we're planning to tell the healthcare community that we're the most consumer-centric company out there. We understand them, and they've been involved in every step of the process. And so we've got to fit test these samples that we have. Meanwhile, everyone's locked down. Healthcare professionals are working around the clock. And typically for fit tests, you have some people to come by your office, do some tests, and everybody is locked down. And so Chris had a box of samples. We had about 20 people who had signed up to do fit tests. And so Chris would drive all over Portland, show up at a nurse's door who had signed up to fit test, leave a box of shoes on their doorstep, ring the bell, and then run back to his car. Because we thought that if you were within 20 feet of somebody, you could get COVID at the time, right? So he's in his car, sets up a Zoom on his phone in the car, and then guides them through a fit test. And he does this 20 times. So we can't just have one person. We need a lot of feedback. And so all of this, I mean, if you have any listeners who are footwear developers who have been through this process, it's really difficult doing it remotely. And it's incredibly difficult doing it with a new brand, totally new products. You're not just working off of what happened last year. And like Chris really did the work to make that happen. And I think that really set that experience, like set the bar for what the level of work that was expected at our company was. And it really set that core value of like, no matter what happens, like one of our core values is make it happen. Like if there's a challenge, you figure out a way around it. And a second core value for our company was to always learn and improve no matter what happens. And so I look at that as like a moment that really, we could have stumbled or things could have taken longer, and Chris overcame and set our company on the right path.
Okay, let me get this straight. So the samples miraculously come March of 2020. Just totally out of curiosity, when the samples come, how many samples do you get? Are they different sizes, different colors? What does the sample package look like?
How many? We had 5 or 6 pairs of, we were exploring a couple different models, like a slip-on and a lace. Okay. I think we had like 5, this was a long time ago and I wasn't the product guy. So, but I think we had 5 or 6 different models, all size 8. And I think that was it. So just 5 or 6 pairs of shoes and slightly different models. And these were like first run samples. So like, I mean, they weren't even cut on like normal molds. Like it wasn't a shoe you could wear anywhere.
Okay. So now it gets delivered. Chris, it's like, I've got to figure out a way around this. They're not coming in the office. So you're telling me he drove to people's houses, put them on their doorstep, got on Zoom, asked them to walk around. Is that how the fit test works?
Yeah, basically, they would set up their computer on the floor. He would guide them through the fitting. So like there was a Brannock device. That's the thing they use when you're a little kid at the shoe store and the person measures your feet. So he would guide them through the measurement. He would guide them through how to walk around and give him the feedback that he needed. And he wasn't able to manually like touch and feel to see how well it was fitting. So he had to be really specific in how he was guiding people.
That is incredible. I feel like that could almost be a movie in its own right of how you went to market with the samples to test them. Okay, so now obviously the company's having success. There is a demand for the shoes. They're being sold. People are buying them. Tell me this, as you were hitting this growth trajectory, what was the most important component of the culture that kept things going in this direction that you needed, that you guys were after, and that was growing the business, getting the message out? But how did you develop that culture?
So I think I'll actually fast forward a little bit for the best example of culture. So in summer of 20, we codified like our mission and core values as a company. And so our mission was built around this shared belief that everybody working with the company had, that healthcare professionals should be treated like elite athletes. And everyone knows that elite athletes have the best designers in the world creating their products. They have an expectation their product enhances performance. People listen and truly care what they're saying when they provide that feedback. And so that was embodied in everybody, that shared belief that healthcare professionals should be treated like elite athletes. And then we worked together as a team to codify a set of shared values that were our expectations of how everyone would show up. So the first value was make it happen. No matter what comes our way, we find a solution. Number 2 was to always learn and improve. And number 3 was to be humbly confident. Number 4 was to help the team first. And then number 5 was situate yourself, which essentially meant to understand the environment that you're in, understand your identity, how you interact, so you can be the best possible version of yourself. And those were how we showed up every day. And so we ran into some challenges in our first year, and actually goes back to the coach of the Showtime Lakers and still general manager of the Miami Heat was famous for saying that success is often the first step towards disaster. And that was codified by what he called the disease of more, which basically meant that with a championship basketball team, winning one championship is one thing. But then in the second year, everyone wants more playing time, more credit, bigger salaries. And so we had this amazing launch where we launched via a pre-sale in September of 20. We did $1 million in revenue in 12 days in our pre-sale. It was incredible. And then we delivered 7,700 pairs of shoes to launch the company in December of 20. We go live for continuous commerce in January, and we did 800,000 in revenue in our first month. And then I think we closed out the first quarter with over 2 million in sales at positive EBITDA in our first quarter, which is incredible. And then we start running into our first challenges. And we had just a few people from our team who were wanting more credit, new positions, unhappy with their roles. And, we spent a lot of time, trying to work through that. And unfortunately, it ended up, and this was reported in the Portland Business Journal, that it came to a head when you're the CEO of the company, like I was. You're not just responsible for one group of people, you're responsible for the entire employee base, all of the stakeholders. And the demands that this group had, I wasn't able to meet and keep all of the other stakeholders happy. So they came to our board with an ultimatum that we either remove Brian as president of the company, or we're going to leave. And one of the people in this group was an influencer with over 1 million followers. And the unspoken threat was, we're going to crush the company if you don't meet our demands. And so this was one of the most difficult periods in my life. When the group left, they alluded on social media to a culture of racism and misogyny. They told a story online that we had forced them out. And it was brutal. I mean, we were in the middle of a social media shitstorm, pardon my language, where we were getting thousands of messages from former customers who were saying we should shut down. Our customer service was dealing with messages from people who were saying that anybody who works at this company is a terrible person and should go kill themselves. I mean, we experienced the worst that social media has to offer. And one of the most difficult things was our employees, they were put into the middle of this and don't know what to believe, because they're hearing all these things on social media. We had get-togethers, an all-day meeting as a team where everyone could share everything that was on their mind. And so to answer your question about the culture building, is I believe that every single challenge you face as a company is an opportunity to build culture. And our team, when they ultimately looked at it, we shared everything that's happening, they realized that we had a set of values that I shared with you previous that were our expectations of how we would work together as a team. And when they looked at it, they saw myself and my business partner upholding these values every single day. They saw our commitment to always learning and improving, to being humbly confident, et cetera, et cetera. And when they looked at the way this small group from our team that was acting, they didn't see anything with the values. And so over the course of the rest of the year, we navigated. I mean, I realized that our runway had gotten cut significantly shorter because startups run on cash. You're burning cash early on. You can run out of time. Our brand was, in a terrible place on social media, because ultimately your brand is just what people are saying about you. It's not what you intend, it's what people are saying about you. We're in a really bad place. But over the course of the rest of the year, we were able to get our sales. Our sales had fallen over 50% after this happened. We were able to get our sales back on track. We were able to raise a line of credit and a new round of equity funding that gave us runway for another year. What I'm most proud of is we retained 100% of our remaining staff. So of all that was going on, everything they were going through, 100% of our staff stayed on board because they said, we believe healthcare professionals should be treated like elite athletes. And this is the place where we can live that out. And despite all of this happening, we see in the teammates that remain, everybody upholding these values that we deem so important. And I don't think without those values, I think the company would have died that summer because people wouldn't have known why they were there, what the expectations of the teammates were. But we were able to. We were able to sustain 2022, which brought all sorts of other challenges because of those values. And so your original question was, how do you build culture? We codified our expectations of each other. And that was just one challenge we came to. But, when I look at how I define myself as a leader, I look at everything every single moment that comes up as an opportunity to build culture. And your culture is what you do when things are difficult, not what you do when things are good. Your core values, your culture, are just what you do when things are hard. And, that experience really built those key values into our culture in a way that was so powerful.
Brian, that's an incredible amount of adversity. I did not know this part of the story. And as you're sharing this with me, I started thinking, okay, now we go back to the lesson that your dad taught you after you lost a soccer game. And that is, you have an opportunity to react, but instead of reacting, right, you went back to the core values, right? Here's the 5 values. And you focused on healthcare professionals are elite athletes, and the team rallied around that. So that's incredible. I can't even imagine what that must have felt like, or the challenges that you felt internally, that a small group of individuals were so dissatisfied that they essentially tried to take this beautiful ship that you all were building and try to take it down. Amazing.
Thanks. The summer of 21 wasn't one of my favorite times. That was a really difficult period. I'm really proud of what our team accomplished during that period.
That's amazing. So then looking back, so let me ask you this. Usually I ask people this question. I ask them at the beginning of their career, if they could give themselves some advice, what would they give them? What would they tell themselves? Let me ask you this. Looking back at the beginning of building BALA Footwear, what advice would you give yourself at the very beginning of this?
I would say to focus on a different question when I learned a lot about team building through that process. And when, we or I were looking at different people to bring into the team, the question I was asking was, what skill do we need? And does this person have that? And the question the much more important to be asking is, why does this person want to be part of this startup? And the reason is, early on in the journey of a startup, people have to do lots and lots of things. And really, they have to have one thing that they're incredibly good at. And in addition, have the ability to learn new things. But what gets people through the difficult period is the why they're part of anything. And I wasn't experienced enough, I don't think, to recognize how much more important that why is than any bit of skill. So if I could go back, I would say focus when you're looking at new teammates. Be sure to understand why they want to be interested, because that'll tell you everything you need to know about their ability to support this team.
Yeah, that is, I'm going to make an assumption you're talking about Simon Sinek, right? And the why.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think about that with my business almost on a daily basis. Why? Why are we doing this? Why? What can we do? It's not what we have. It's not the product. It's not your product. It's the why. And when you look back, you can see it in the DNA of BALA, right? Why? How to help create performance footwear for elite athletes that are healthcare professionals.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, Brian. Okay, so tell me, we've got one last question for you. What book have you recommended to more people that you care about than any other book?
That's a great question. So I'll actually talk specifically to a chapter of a book. So about, 10, 15 years ago, the former ESPN writer and now founder of The Ringer, Bill Simmons, wrote a book called The Book of Basketball, which is a compilation of all sorts of basketball-related things. But the first chapter is called The Secret. And he recounts his time talking with NBA legend Isaiah Thomas about the process of building his Pistons teams into champions, winning, I think in 89 and 90, they won. But so I recommend that to a lot of people who I work with who are leaders and build teams, because Isaiah Thomas reveals a lot of the things that the Pistons did to build culture, to retain teammates through challenges. And also, I love that book because, one, Bill Simmons, he built The Ringer and they sold to Spotify for, I think, $250 million in 2020. So I think he took a few things from writing that chapter to building his company. But in that chapter, they also he shares a number of other wonderful references that I've gone on to read other really, really incredible books. I stole the quote about Pat Riley and the disease of Moore from that chapter of the Book of Basketball. And there's a bunch of other great books like Breaks the Game, which recounts the 77-78 Blazers journey to try to win another championship. He references Go Up for Glory by Bill Russell and a number of other great basketball books about team building. So if you just want to read one chapter 1 of the Book of Basketball, and if you prefer it in podcast form, if you look up his podcast, The Book of Basketball 2.0, the first episode tells the same story.
I'm super interested. Okay, so I'm going to put this in for anyone who's listening, I'll put this into the show notes. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. And for everyone who's listening right now, as I always share, please be kind. Think about it. Be kind to everyone that you encounter today. But even more importantly, be kinder to yourself. And thanks for tuning in.